Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Today's topic is the simple things.
Les choses simples de la vie. I did that with a fairly ordinary French accent. But that's how the French say the simple things in life.
Yeah, right.
And what got me to thinking about this, last weekend, my wife and I visited Cairns for the weekend. And we went to a lovely French restaurant called C'est Bon. If you're in Cairns, go to C'est Bon.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good experience. Now, during that experience...
Just before you get into that, mate, for someone who spent 3 months in France not that long ago, I really thought your French accent would have been better. That was terrible. That was what it sounds like if I dragged the most bogan Australian off the side of the road and said, "Here, read this phrase, mate." Are you just rusty? Like, were you better than that when you were in France?
Digressing here, I actually got to play a year of rugby league in France in 1997, and we had a lot of Australians in the team, in the French rugby league team when we lived over there. There was a guy on our team, Jamie Olgenick, and he actually spoke French, but in an Australian accent. It was hilarious. So someone would bring him something, he'd go, "Merci beaucoup," and so he learned French quite a bit, but he only ever said it in an Australian accent. So it was funny. I'm probably
a bit rusty. I'm hoping you were when you're immersed in it, when you're in the zone, you had the more French affectation of your pronunciation.
That's right. So I've opened a can of worms here now. So the French restaurant last weekend set off thinking about my time in France. Now, I've had two different times in France. I had 1997, where I was a 22-year-old single man playing rugby league in France, living in Paris. Fantastic experience. And we had 2014, so I was nearly married. And before kids came along, I'm glad we did it in 2014. My wife, Susie, and I actually got the chance to drive around France. So we spent 2 months in France driving basically around France, not stopping everywhere, of course, but basically living in France for 2 years.
Yeah.
So what we were talking about, what we were reminiscing about in the French restaurant in Cairns over the weekend was how simple a life most French people live.
Yeah.
And enjoy that life.
Yeah. They
don't need squillions of dollars of money to enjoy their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And we partook in that, and we were amazed at actually what things you could enjoy.
Yeah.
What got me to thinking about that is that there is a happy medium here in Australia, and that happy medium is that you retirees don't necessarily need $100,000 a year to live off. Like, if you want to live that lifestyle, if you want to travel overseas every year and so forth, then maybe you do. If that's just beyond your means, and we're all bound by available resources, and one of those in fact, we would say probably the biggest available resource, Dallas, is time. Yeah. Because we can take $100 and turn it into $5 million if we have enough time.
Yes.
So time is the one thing that we really have to get right, because of the fact that we only have 4,000 weeks, as you've said, on average on this earth.
Yeah.
where I'm going with this is that if you can't afford 5-star hotels and things like that in retirement, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have a good retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can camp by a beautiful stream.
Yeah.
And things like that. So you can.
I've used your analogy many times with people talking about this exact thing, which is you've mentioned before that. So another plug for Magnetic Island. We should be getting a commission from the Chancellor Enterprise Tourism Board. But you've made the comment before that if you go and have a 3-week holiday on, you're going to stay over Maggie Island, it's amazing beach sitting there, you go for a nice walk around, you go for you're never sitting there going, this is terrible, I wish I was in the south of France. However, sitting here, we often daydream about go to the south of France or go to Magnetic Island as though they are vastly different. And they are, and it's one of those things you go, it's not to say that you shouldn't want to go to the south. If you have the resources to do that, that's fantastic. But I think the point you're making here is that we are bound by resources. And if you don't have the resources to go on that trip to the south of France, that's the thing. It's an interesting one. I've used that example before. When you're living that experience, when you are actually enjoying the simple things in life, you're not sitting there going, this is about 30% as good as what it would be to go to the south of France. You're just enjoying it.
So you don't necessarily have to be sitting in the beautiful French restaurant.
Yeah.
You could have a baguette and cheese and a glass of farm-made wine by a stream somewhere.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things that working out the overall balance of your retirement is one of those things that I think is underlooked for some people. Because at the end of the day, there are competing resources, and one of those big competing resources is time. So if you move that lever of time, and what I mean by that is that if money was the only objective, we would all work till 90.
Yes.
Or till we couldn't walk anymore.
Yeah.
By its very nature, we would accumulate more
money. Yeah.
You want to move that lever, you want to bring that lever forward to 65, if you do, or 60 for a lot of people, and go to part-time work or retire at 60 or whatever it is. Then one of those big trade-offs that you need to make is okay, well, I will only then be able to draw X amount
70,000 instead
income.
of 90,000, for example.
What are the things that I'm going to trade off there? So I don't know where I'm going with this.
I think this is a really interesting point because it's often really hard for people to visualize. So we've discussed this recently. We're seeing a huge influx of new clients and our existing clients who, on average, our clients come to us the first time at 55, and they're 10 years from retirement. They want to make they're probably spending $80,000 or $100,000 a year now, and they want to be able to live that lifestyle and retire at 65. And so you're kind of going, right, you're at 700,000 in super. You're trying to get to 2 million. Practically, what's happening and what we're seeing more of is that people get to 60, 61, 62, and what they actually are doing is going, I've often gone from 700,000 to 1.4 million or thereabouts, and I'm on track for that. However, and so the plan's working, but I think maybe I want to actually change the goals and the focus. And so what people are often saying at that time is we're having really interesting conversations around, if I was to either stop work at 60, if I stop work at 61 with 1.4 million rather than keeping ploughing on and getting to $2 million, what does that make my retirement look like? Or more often it's hey, what if we were to cut back and work part-time now and instead of getting to $2.2 million or $2.4 million and being able to draw $100,000 in today's dollars, what would it look like if I worked part-time? And we can sit there and do the numbers and go, right, well, instead of getting to 2.4 and being able to draw 100,000, you'll get to somewhere in the ballpark of 1.8 to 2 million, and you'll be able to draw the equivalent of 80,000 in today's dollars. So we can do that, and then we sort of sit there triumphantly and go, right, so you get about 80,000 a year instead of 100,000 a year. where I think that financial planning and by its nature thinking of the future, where it falls down is, what does your life look like spending $80,000 a year versus 100? And this is the point to me, is that for some people, what's important to them and what they want to do means that they will look at that and go, no, the things that I want to spend $100,000 a year on are important to me, and I'm going to keep going on and get to that target. And that's a completely valid way to do it. But there are many, many people where if you actually pull that apart, and I hate doing budgets with people, so I'm not doing that. Yeah. But if you think of, if someone said to you, you have to free up $20,000. You can't spend 100. You have to spend 80. What would you drop? What are the first things you drop? And usually when you raise that thought experiment, people list 3 things. Bang, bang, bang. They go, well, I wouldn't go to. I might go on one trip overseas every 3 years and a trip around Australia every year instead, or I'd do this instead of this, or instead of upgrading a cars every 5 years, I'd just drive and I'd drive this old thing in the ground, or I'd downsize my house, or whatever it is. There's people are normally, once you actually raise that as not as a theoretical thing of what would your life look like on 80,000, but if you go, if you have to find 20,000 spare dollars, right? You have to cut your expense by 20. What do you drop?
It's a great exercise to go through.
Very quickly tell you what they, and I laugh because what people tend to actually do is go the other way and go, what are the non-negotiables for me?
Yeah.
So
it's an easy one when you cap that dollar figure. What tends to happen is that just picture all of the things that you're spending money on with boxing gloves.
Yes.
And when you say 20% of you got to go, they're fighting.
Yes. Yeah.
They're fighting to get to the top.
Yes.
Now the things that are most important to you.
Yeah.
I mean, there's ignoring the givens. There's givens in there, like your rates and water and things like that on your home, your land tax or whatever. So they're all givens.
Yeah.
It's the discretionary expenses that start to fight. They start to, and what tends to rise to the top are the most important ones.
Yeah.
And you and I know this is easy because we know that there's a list as long as your arm of expenses. Well, and if you shave some of them, we're digressing a little bit here, but we try to eliminate first and then shave second.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting any enjoyment out of it, or not only are you not getting enjoyment, but you would get better enjoyment reallocating the money that you put to that thing elsewhere.
Yeah.
And the reallocation could be, hey,
I'm going to buy back my time.
I'm going to buy back my time here.
Yeah. Yep.
Because that's where that $20,000 is going. Really. Yeah. You're buying back your time.
Yes.
You're saying I can retire earlier and buy some time here.
Yeah.
So that the reallocation, you and I know to be an easy experience, even though you detest it. You don't actually have to formally go through it because effectively those expenses.
That's a really interesting way to think about that. Is if you thought of that as a line, because I've thought of this the other way. So I remember when we had younger clients, it was one of the things that people would tell you things weren't important to you, and then when you looked at what they were spending their money on, so I always use the example of people would say spending time with my kids is the most important thing to me. Yeah. What's this $230 a week car loan repayment? Oh, well, I bought this big flash 4-wheel drive so that we can go camping as a family. Yeah. And I go, that's a day's wages after tax. For a lot of the time, it would line up neatly with something like that would stick in my mind. We'd go, do you actually think that if you had another possible line item under it, which was buy back every Friday versus buy the brand new 4-wheel drive, what do you think your family would want? Do you think your family want you to go to work all Friday or all Saturday, for example, and buy this 4-wheel drive so that you then can go camping, which you can't because you're working all weekend? Or do you think they would want you to go, I'm going to reallocate that. I'm not going to buy that 4-wheel drive. I'm going to buy back every Friday to spend time with my kids, or every Saturday, or whatever the case may be. But look, that's an interesting way to think of it. Is buying back your time is a line item on that budget, and for many people, where you can enjoy it, they do enjoy the simple things in life, which I think most of us really do. That can actually be one of the most valuable things that you can allocate your resources to.
And where it stands out in France, especially country France, like in the country areas, as opposed to the big cities, where it stands out is most people there have bought back their time.
Yes. Yeah.
And you see it everywhere. The French, I believe, have it perfect in terms of the balance of life. Yeah. Like they spend enough time with children. If the boulangerie, did you like that one?
That was better.
if that closes at 1 p.m, that closes at 1 p.m.
Yeah.
If there's someone outside that wants to buy 1,000 baguettes and they're at 1 minute past one, too bad.
Yeah.
You wait.
Yep.
You wait an hour and a half until it opens again.
Yeah.
So it's really apparent. I think we can take a lot from the French in those terms.
Yeah.
And really consider it and think it through exactly what you're actually looking to achieve here.
Yeah.
But the trade-off or the concept of buying your time, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that concept.
Yes.
Because
and that's, I guess, the thing is, if you think of that as to use your analogy of the Royal Rumble of all these discretionary expenses fighting it out, and a new car's fighting it out with a renovation, and then there's a going out to dinner every week, they're in their box away. What's often happened is on the sideline is sitting there is take every Monday off. He's sitting there on the sideline. He's got his gloves taped up. He's ready to go. He's ready. If he got in there, he'd annihilate all these other things. Yeah. But we somehow don't let him into the mix and go, no. I work 5 days a week. That's what I do. I'm not retiring until 65. You stay on the sidelines, even though he's he's going to go and wipe the floor with all these other things. That is the most important thing to you. If you added that in as a potential option, you would look at that and sort of often people, and we have these conversations, they immediately go, well, that would be fantastic if I could have every Friday off, and then that's when it gets interesting, is to make it concrete and to go, okay, well, not say if you were to work part time. If you had every Monday and every Friday off, what would your life look like? Well, actually, that'd be great, because on Fridays I could, I'd go and meet these mates for a coffee in the morning, and then I'd go and I'd take my grandkid to swimming lessons on Friday mornings, and then I'd go here, and then I'd get a chance to sort of read a book down the beach, whatever it is that you actually want to do, and then go, and then I'd still have my whole normal weekend. And often when people get talking about that, that's a really exciting thing for them, and once it's raised as a potential that they can really think through. It's just that it's often not thought about, because we sort of work the other way and go, I have this amount of financial resources. What am I going to spend those resources on? And I think that's where you get away from the simple things, because you go, well, if I've got $100,000 to spend instead of 80, or if I've got 150 to spend instead of 100, what can I spend the 50 on? I'll go on a nicer holiday, or I'll buy a bigger car, or I'll do whatever that is. I'll find a way to allocate that resource as a transferring, money for possessions or experiences, rather than thinking of it as, if I just didn't need that money, if I actually sat down and thought about what makes me happy, and I realized that there are a lot of things where I can simplify and spend less and be just as happy, I then can go to the input phase there and go, well, if I don't need as much money to get the possessions and experiences that I want, I probably don't need to do as much work in order to get the money in order to fund those things. So that's a really interesting way to think of it, is that those simple things, which we all know, and it's a cliche for a reason. Everyone talks about it as, simple things in life are best. And most of the time, when you're talking to people about things that they've enjoyed in the past, they're often talking about things that aren't overly expensive, or that you could do relatively inexpensively. So to me, it's really just a matter of making that concrete and looking at it and thinking about your financial life in that way.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 financial advisors. For more information and resources, visit the Money Over 50 website, mo50.com.au. We look forward to catching up again soon.